Hi, guys. Thanks for stopping by. And if you're subscribed, thank you. And if you're not, I hope you will subscribe and tell your friends so we can keep doing this. Um, with Democrats still not doing daily briefings, as we've talked about, we got to go out there and I feel like we're having little secret neighborhood meetings with independent media and the podcast and the YouTube and everything, and individual senators going out and doing their thing. But I'm really glad to see what are obvious 2028 hopefuls hitting the trail, so to speak, and showing us what they got. Not only will they be doing the right thing, like Tim Walz going into Iowa, going into those red congressional districts where the Republican MAGA congressmen won't have town halls. And you've got a lot of the folks out there. I think it looks like Pete Buttigieg will soon be going out there doing something with Democrats. Like I said, I think he should be the guy doing the daily briefings. He should do it for a year, and that probably does give him an advantage in 2028, as we've said. So be it. Gavin Newsom, what he's doing, no. That said, I'm going to tell you a little story because I think it's good. It's important that we understand language. And I think if Mayor Pete or someone of his caliber were behind the lectern every day, fact checking Trump, calling them out on things, letting people know the truth about what Elon Musk and Doge are doing. I'm going to try and use the same. I don't have his communication skills, but explaining the best I can the things that need to be communicated. So in this case, I'll tell a little story. I used to be a Republican. I was a senior staffer in leadership, communications director for the House Education and Workforce Committee, Labor Committee. We were considered the Rhino Committee, and Newt Gingrich was Speaker. I got the job after they got rid of a guy for the first couple of months after the whole school lunch fiasco. Republicans cutting school lunch, blah, blah, blah. Well, it turns out Republicans were slowing the rate of growth of school lunch. They weren't cutting it, but they lost the communications war because the policy people weren't communicating with the communications people. And so, he gets thrown under the bus. So I'm in a meeting where we were talking about it's been going on for a while. I was one of the five coordinators, the five people that ran this committee. There was the staff director. We had the head labor guy, the head education guy, our parliamentarian, and me, and a staff of 50 some odd people. So we would bring them in sometimes, some of the other people, to the weekly coordinators meeting to explain some things, to go over some things. Obviously, as a communications director, I could not know the details of every single policy position, every bill that we were pushing. I had to get the basics. I also would tell people, look, if I have to speak your language as a lawyer, as a detailed policy person, if for me to be able to understand this, I have to come all the way over to you to hear what you're saying, then it's going to be that much harder for me to then put it in language for the press so that regular Americans can understand and care about it. And I needed them to at least meet me halfway so then I could decide what points to highlight and how to, extrapolate those points and define an overall effort or build out by that way. So I'm giving the short version of this. So when I have these policy people in a room and they're talking about how to save money, what to put in the budget to save money for Meals on Wheels, which is meals for vulnerable, poor, elderly people, senior citizens who need food. Okay. So we're talking about the program. There's all of this policy speak and federal government speak. And I felt like they were doing it on purpose to me. Sometimes they looked at me like I was the enemy because if it sounded like we were doing something that was alarming, I'm going to tell them that. And they thought that meant that I was putting up a roadblock for them. And these people, they weren't partisan or whatever, but as a communications person, I'm like, you can't just do this stuff without explaining it. And if you're doing something that you don't want to explain, maybe don't do it or find another way or go out there and sell it if it's a budget cut. If it's something that's duplicative or there's fraud or waste, and if it's not, then you better have hearings and duke it out with the other side. Put it all out there, make your case. And so when they're talking about Meals on Wheels, and they started using this terminology, and they're talking about the savings over the course of X number of years. I'm like, but where do you achieve the savings? I'm like, I'm not understanding. And don't talk to me like I'm stupid. I'm a pretty smart person. I'm trying to, I'm asking these questions and I couldn't pull it out of them. Finally, they said, well, by attrition. And I'm like, attrition. Yes. I said, so, and that what they were saying, it took, I swear, 20 minutes to finally get them. I said, by attrition, you mean old people die and we just don't feed new old people that need the food. That's how you achieve your savings. When the elderly people who get the Meals on Wheels die, you simply don't expand the program, something to that effect. And they're like, well, yes. I'm like, you were going to have me go out there and talk about these savings that we're going to achieve and pretend that it was through, cutting some waste or, some things around the edges that might be doable. But what we're really talking about is simply not making the program be there for elderly people coming up or cutting the rate of growth or whatever. And what I didn't like is that they weren't explaining it to me. They purposely did not want me to know. And so when I did finally figure it out, I kind of blew up. I'm like, what the hell are you guys doing? Um, and I think that that's something that Democrats need to pay attention to now. If they cannot go out and explain to the American people what Elon Musk and Trump are doing, and they are leaving it up to Elon Musk and Trump to explain it, and then maybe individually some Democrats go out here and there, some of them can get on TV or do a podcast, that sort of thing, but without a unified, singular voice and message and fact checking on a daily basis, it's going to be hodgepodge. So I'm getting to the point where I'm just so frustrated that they're not doing it. It's clearly the egos of Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries. They're not going to give that kind of power to another Democrat. They'll give it to Donald Trump and Elon Musk, but they don't want to give that person, put a person in front of the cameras behind the lectern on a daily basis, a person with a lot of knowledge and gravitas, and who wouldn't just be a talking head. They would be a communications advisor. As you know, I've suggested Pete Buttigieg, but it could be someone else. But on par with the White House press secretary and the White House daily briefings. As I've said, the press is already right there in the House and press galleries. You don't have to say, oh, well, they cover it. They will. I promise you. When you fail to explain yourselves to the American people, they will misunderstand you. They will misunderstand the people who are lying to them. Like I'm seeing this all over social media with people saying, "Oh, Democrats don't want to cut waste and fraud. They're opposing Elon Musk and Doge." Well, Elon Musk and Doge are lying about the savings they're finding. And we don't have anybody out there who will create a platform that is as big as the platform that Trump and Elon Musk have. Okay? And I say this to candidates when I consult, say, congressional races. You can't say, well, if they say this, we'll just say that. It's like, it won't matter if you've not done the work to put yourself on a position where you have the same platform, the same microphone, the same reach as your opponent. And right now, it is Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries who, because they're the only ones who can really do this to make this a congressional function. They simply won't do it. Their little briefings on, well, this is what we're doing today in the House and Senate. That's not it. That's your updates on what's going on in those bodies. But we need more than that. We do not have anybody out there fact checking Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Speaker Johnson, Sean Hannity, all of these garbage people who are lying to the American people. I know that what Donald Trump is doing is destroying this country. And I know that a lot of MAGA don't understand that. Some of them do, but they think, hey, I'm in on the con. So they're shocked when they are hurt, when they lose their federal jobs, when they're going to be losing their Medicaid. They're shocked because they didn't know. It does serve them right. But we could have a Democrat, we could be doing this every day to let them know. To let them know. Because even if they only watch Fox, they probably are getting some information, something elsewhere. And maybe Fox wouldn't cover these briefings, but everybody else would, and eventually it would seep in. Okay. And it's not happening. Chuck Schumer just isn't good at it. Or maybe he isn't up enough on how media works these days because he's a dinosaur and he's been in forever. He thinks, well, if I said something this week and put out a statement, so that's it. On my podcast, I have over on Patreon. By the way, it's the same name as this, Politics with Sherry Jacobus, and I do interviews and everything. And I had Eric Ham on this week, and he and I talked about this. And I said, look, I'm I'm not saying I agree with Chuck Schumer, but I don't think the Democrats are capable of communicating what's going on, and they would get blamed for a government shutdown. And for that reason only, I'm thinking, we can't do this because I've been there before with people who are bad at this. And they won't let the people who are good at this do the job. So, yeah, I'm kind of thinking, I get the sentiment not wanting to do this, but Democrats don't know how to do it right. And it could turn into a disaster for them, a government shutdown, because they refuse to effectively communicate with the American people. They know what they need to do. Chuck Schumer, Jeffries, and the others, they know what's needed. They know. They don't want to do it because they are threatened. They don't want to give up the spotlight, the power. They simply don't. It is that simple. And so I've seen people calling for Chuck Schumer to step aside. And I agree, but for kind of other reasons. I just think he's not up to this job as a communicator, which means Democrats are going to have a very hard time voting against the things that Donald Trump wants when he's lying to the American people because Chuck Schumer doesn't understand communications at this level. They do say that the most dangerous place to be in Washington is between Chuck Schumer and a TV camera. I mean, he's been in the media for a long time. He has already proven he is not up to this task. Full stop. And I've dealt with people like this as a communications director for a committee. When the policy people who know so much, well, you just don't understand the policy. And if you understood the policy, I was like, no, I'm trying to understand the policy, but to a point where I don't have to work so hard. I'm trying to look at this like the American people and the media would look at it. And if you're in the weeds on policy or talking over their head because you don't really want to you talk to them the way they need to be talked to, you're going to lose them. You're going to lose them. And like I said, in the case that I'm talking about, these policy people were purposely being obtuse because they knew what I would say. And I was like, you're just going to do this without even holding hearings or taking the time to explain it to the American people? And here we are now, where Republicans don't even have to try because Democrats aren't fighting back. Certain individuals are, and like I said, I love what Tim Walz is doing. I suspect Pete Buttigieg is going to be out there doing the same thing. We see Senator Chris Murphy, who he should throw his hat in the ring. There's Shapiro. There's Andy Beshear, who's publicly come out against what Gavin Newsom has done by hosting fascists and criminals. Steve Bannon, Charlie Cook, on his podcast. So there's a field out there. We do have good communicators, but they can't go out there and have the same platform that the White House briefing room has, because the Democratic leaders who control that and could make it happen won't do it. So they're going out there hodgepodge doing it. And maybe the cumulative effect over time will be that you reach the American people, but it still is not a daily unified fact-checking briefing. It's just not. There's no substitute for that. There simply isn't. And anybody that tells you differently doesn't understand this business, and they shouldn't be giving advice. So this is negligence. There's no reason for it. But I look forward to seeing more of Tim Walz and Shapiro and Andy Beshear, and I'd like to see Governor Whitmer out there and Illinois Governor, whatever his last name is. I will learn it because I think he's going to be a real player. But we do have, and I know I'm forgetting some names, and people always send them, but we have a pretty strong field out there. Um, but they're not going to be able to be a substitute for the unified voice on a daily basis. And that is ego. And like I said, that is the only reason that I was really nervous about a government shutdown, because Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries do not have the communications chops, nor should it be their job to give that overall broader message, because one has to speak for their party in the Senate and the other for their party in the House. And you need somebody else in there who knows how to kind of do that fancy footwork sometimes to say, well, each House and Senate is different. We don't speak for them, but mainly do the fact checking on Trump and let people know exactly what Elon and Trump are doing. And right now, Democrats aren't doing it. There you go.